I was 27 years old the morning Vale Crest Winery dumped the first oak barrel behind my farm. It was 6:10, cold enough that my breath showed white in the kitchen window. I heard the trucks before I saw them. Diesel engines grinding up the service road, metal chains knocking against flatbeds. By the time I pulled on my boots and reached the south fence, 3 men were rolling barrels down the embankment. Not 10 barrels, not 50, 800. They came down in rows, stained purple around the rims, some split at the seams, some still leaking dark wine sediment into the weeds. "Hey!" I shouted. "You can't leave those here." Nobody stopped. Then a black pickup rolled in behind the trucks. Marcus Vale stepped out wearing a pressed vest and boots too clean for November mud. His family owned the winery, half the valley, and most of the people who sat on the county board. He looked at me, then at the dead field behind me. "Nora Hale," he said. "Still trying to save this place? This is my property." Marcus glanced toward the fence line. "That strip is under access dispute. It drains into my south field." He shrugged. "They're empty barrels." One of them tipped as he spoke. Thick black liquid ran from the bunghole and crawled downhill like oil. "Empty?" I said. He smiled. "Relax. We'll move them when we have time." I told him I was calling the county. That made him laugh. Not loudly, just enough. Then he looked past me at 42 acres of gray soil, dead grass, and an irrigation ditch that hadn't held water since July. "Sweetheart," he said, "nothing growing on your land is worth protecting." I wanted to hit him. Instead, I took out my phone and photographed every truck, every license plate, every barrel. Marcus watched me, then climbed back into his pickup. "Winter's coming," he called through the window. "You should think about selling before the bank decides for you." He drove off before I answered. By noon, the trucks were gone. The barrels remained. They covered the ground behind my fence like a wooden graveyard. That evening, I walked the boundary with a notebook, numbering them one by one. Barrel 116 was cracked. Barrel 204 had a burned mark on the side. Barrel 317 was half buried in the slope. I bent down to photograph it. That was when I saw the grass. Not brown, not brittle, green. A thick circle of it was growing directly beneath the oldest barrel, greener than anything else on my farm. I touched the soil. It was soft, and when I pushed my fingers deeper, something moved beneath them. The thing moving beneath my fingers was an earthworm. I pulled my hand back and stared at it. For anyone else, one earthworm would have meant nothing. On my farm, it felt impossible. The south field had not produced a healthy crop in 6 years. My grandfather, Silas Hale, had fought that land until the week he died. He planted wheat twice, clover once, and alfalfa in the upper section where the soil was supposed to drain better. Nothing lasted. The ground hardened every summer until it cracked in long gray lines. When rain finally came, the water ran over the surface instead of sinking in, carrying the last of the topsoil into the drainage ditch. Grandpa called it tired land. The county assessor called it marginal acreage. The bank called it insufficient collateral. I inherited all 42 acres in March, along with a rusted tractor, a leaking roof, and $38,000 in debt. My mother wanted me to sell before the funeral flowers had wilted. "Nora, there is no shame in letting it go," she told me. There was a developer from Portland willing to pay $240,000. He wanted to divide the farm into vacation cabins with views of the vineyards. Everyone said it was a fair offer. Maybe it was. But my grandfather had left one sentence in the margin of his will. "Do not sell the south field until you understand what is wrong with it." He did not explain what that meant. 3 weeks after I inherited the farm, First Valley Bank gave me 8 months to bring the loan current. If I missed the December deadline, they could begin foreclosure. 8 months. That was why Marcus Vale's barrels mattered. I called the county environmental office the morning after the dumping. A woman named Denise listened while I explained the leaking sediment, the disputed access strip, and the 800 barrels stacked above my field. "Do you have proof they came from Vale Crest?" she asked. "I photographed the trucks." "Do you have a survey showing the barrels are on your land?" "I have my grandfather's map." "That may not be enough," She explained that Marcus had filed an access claim years earlier. Until the boundary dispute was resolved, the county could inspect the barrels, but removing them might require a hearing. How long does that take? There was a pause. Several months. I looked through the kitchen window at the south field. I did not have several months, so I started documenting everything. I numbered each barrel, marked every leak, photographed the slope after rain, and measured how far the dark liquid traveled. On the third afternoon, I returned to barrel 317. I wedged a crowbar beneath the lower rim and pushed until the barrel rolled aside. The smell hit first: sour wine, wet oak, and something sweet underneath. Then I saw the ground. The soil beneath the barrel was black and crumbly. Not gray, not hard, alive. I broke apart one handful. 3 earthworms twisted between my fingers, then 5 more. I looked at the dead fields surrounding me and understood one thing. Whatever had leaked from that barrel was not killing the soil, it was waking it up. The next morning, I cut open barrel 317, not because I knew what I was doing, because 8 months was too little time to keep asking permission. I dragged the barrel into the old equipment shed, set it on 2 concrete blocks, and removed the rusted metal hoops with a hammer. The oak staves had swollen from years of wine and rain. When the final hoop dropped, the barrel split apart with a wet crack. A layer of dark sludge coated the bottom. It smelled sour at first. Old wine, vinegar, wet wood. But beneath that was something earthy, almost sweet. I used a garden trowel to separate what I could identify. Purple-black sediment, cream-colored crystals clinging to the wood, thick patches of dead yeast, and oak staves burned nearly black on the inside. I filled 4 glass jars, labeled them, and drove 12 miles to Eli Warren's house. Eli had taught soil science at the State University before retiring. He was 73, walked with a cane, and still kept a microscope beside his kitchen table. He had known my grandfather for 40 years. When I placed the jars in front of him, he looked at them, then at me. "Tell me you didn't taste any of this." I wasn't planning to. "Good. Desperation makes people inventive." He opened the first jar and smelled it carefully. "Wine lees," he said. "Dead yeast, grape solids, maybe bacterial residue." He tapped the crystals with a metal probe. "Tartaric deposits." Then he picked up a piece of blackened oak. "This part interests me. It's burned." "Charred," he corrected. "Not the same thing." He explained that oak barrels were toasted over fire before they held wine. The charred surface was filled with microscopic spaces. Those spaces could hold water, nutrients, fungi, and bacteria. But dumping winery residue straight onto a field can damage it, he warned. Too acidic, too concentrated. You could create oxygen problems, attract pests, kill roots. So barrel 317 was an accident? Maybe. That word landed harder than no. Eli carried the jars into his workshop. For 2 hours, he tested acidity, moisture, and organic content while I watched numbers appear on an old digital meter. Finally, he spread a sample of my gray field soil across one tray and the black soil from beneath the barrel across another. The difference was obvious even before he spoke. The black soil held together without becoming hard. It smelled alive. Eli leaned over it for a long time. "How many barrels did you say they dumped?" 800. He looked up. I had expected concern. Instead, he looked almost frightened. 12 barrels might prove whether this works, he said. 800 could change your entire farm. For the first time since Marcus arrived, I felt something stronger than anger. Possibility. Then Eli removed his glasses. "But before you touch another one, you need to understand something." "What?" "Those barrels may be sitting beside your property." He pointed toward the jars. "But Vale Crest still owns everything inside them." Eli told me not to touch another barrel, so I started with 12. They were the worst ones in the pile. Split staves, broken hoops, warped lids, each marked with a red spray-painted X. Vale Crest had already classified them as unusable. I photographed every mark before moving them. Then I worked after dark, not because I thought I was stealing, because Marcus Vale had taught me that powerful people often called something worthless until someone else discovered its value. I dragged the 12 barrels into the old machinery yard and dismantled them one at a time. The metal hoops went into a stack. The intact staves went beneath a tarp. The rotten sections I cut into pieces with Grandpa's circular saw. The charred interiors left my hands black. Eli had explained that the oak needed heat without enough oxygen to consume it completely. Done correctly, the wood would become porous carbon. Done badly, it would become ash. My first burn became ash. I dug a shallow pit, packed it with oak chips, and covered it with a sheet of rusted roofing metal. Within 20 minutes, flames escaped around the edges. I tried sealing the gaps with soil. Too late. By morning, 6 barrels worth of oak had collapsed into a pale gray powder that scattered when the wind crossed the yard. Marcus's foreman found me staring at it. Cal Dyer had stopped his truck on the access road. He leaned out the window and looked from the ash to my burned sleeves. "Cooking firewood now?" he called. I said nothing. He laughed and drove away. I wanted to abandon the whole experiment. Instead, I swept the ash into buckets and started again. This time, Eli helped me build a smaller kiln from an old steel feed drum. We drilled air holes near the bottom, packed the barrel staves upright, lit them from the top, then sealed the drum when the wood began glowing red. The smoke changed from white to thin blue. "That's what you're watching for," Eli said. "Not flames, change." The second batch came out black, light and brittle. I crushed it with a fence post, then mixed it with chicken manure from my neighbor, spoiled straw, field soil, and 3 buckets of wine sediment. The smell was unbearable. For 2 weeks, I turned the pile every morning and recorded its temperature every evening. Nothing happened. No worms, no fungi, no miracle. I planted clover in 4 test beds anyway, 1 untreated, 1 with compost, 1 with oak char, and 1 with the full mixture. The seeds emerged unevenly, then stopped. Cal drove past twice. The bank called once. By the 4th week, I had started wondering whether the green grass beneath barrel 317 had been nothing more than coincidence. Then, the rain came. 3 inches in one night. The untreated field flooded as it always did, water shining across the hard surface. But the 4th test bed was different. There was no standing water. I pushed a metal rod into the soil. It sank 12 inches before meeting resistance. In the untreated bed, it stopped at 3. I called Eli before sunrise. He arrived, knelt in the mud, and pressed both hands into the dark soil. Then he looked toward the hundreds of barrels still stacked above my field. "Nora," he said quietly, "don't let Vale Crest take those barrels back." The 4th test bed held water for 9 days. Not standing water, stored water. The surface looked dry by the 3rd afternoon, but when I pushed my fingers 6 inches down, the soil was still cool and damp. The untreated field had already hardened again. That was when I stopped thinking about the barrels as garbage. I started thinking about them as tools. I dismantled 4 more and used the curved oak staves to build low barriers across the south slope. They followed the contour of the land, slowing rainwater before it could gather speed and carry soil into the ditch. I cut 3 barrels in half and placed them beneath the barn gutters, rain collectors. 2 more became compost bays. The cracked lids became stepping boards so I could cross the wet ground without compacting it. Nothing was wasted. Every morning before sunrise, I checked the compost temperature. Every evening, I measured moisture in the test beds. I recorded rainfall, seed germination, soil depth, earthworm counts, and how long water remained beneath the surface. Some days, the numbers improved. Some days, they did not. 1 compost pile turned sour and cold because I added too much winery sediment. Another overheated and killed every worm I introduced. I burned my left palm lifting the kiln lid. A barrel stave split under pressure and drove a splinter beneath my thumbnail so deep Eli had to remove it with pliers. "You could stop," he said. "I could sell too." He did not ask again. By the 6th week, white fungal threads appeared beneath the straw mulch. Then clover began spreading beyond the original test bed. The roots were thin at first, but they reached deeper than anything I had planted the previous spring. After the next rain, I placed 2 glass jars beneath the drainage channels. The water leaving the untreated section was brown with soil. The water leaving the barrel-treated plot was almost clear. Eli held both jars against the light. "You're not just improving the ground," he said. "You're stopping it from leaving." That sentence changed the way I saw the farm. The barrels were holding moisture. The char was holding nutrients. The barriers were holding soil. And for the first time since I inherited the property, the land was beginning to hold its value. Cal Dyer stopped laughing when he drove past. Now he slowed down. Once, I saw him take photographs through his windshield. 3 days later, a delivery driver from Vale Crest parked near the south fence and counted the barrels. That night, I moved my notebooks from the barn into the house. The certified letter arrived the following Monday. It came in a white envelope with the Vale Crest Winery seal printed in gold. I opened it at the kitchen table. The winery accused me of destroying private property, processing commercial waste without authorization, and profiting from materials that did not belong to me. They demanded that I stop immediately. Then I reached the final paragraph. Vale Crest wanted compensation for every barrel I had opened, cut, burned, or moved. The amount was handwritten beneath the attorney's signature, $48,000, more than I owed the bank, and if I did not respond within 10 days, they would take me to court. Marcus Vale arrived 2 days after the letter. This time, he did not come alone. A silver sedan followed his pickup through the access road, and a woman in a gray suit stepped out holding a leather folder against her chest. Marcus stopped beside the south fence. His boots were still clean. Mine were covered in black soil. "This is Lydia Cross," he said. "She represents Vale Crest. I assumed she wasn't here to taste the clover." Lydia did not smile. She opened the folder and handed me a copy of the same demand letter. "The barrels remain the property of Vale Crest Winery," she said. "Their location does not transfer ownership. They were dumped here. They were temporarily stored. For 7 weeks, storage does not become abandonment because you dislike the duration." Marcus walked toward the test beds before I could stop him. He crouched beside the clover and pressed 2 fingers into the soil. The ground had changed visibly by then. The treated section was dark and loose, while the field beyond it remained gray and hard. He rubbed the soil between his fingertips. "How many barrels have you processed?" he asked. "Why?" "I asked you a question, and I asked one first." His jaw tightened. Lydia stepped between us. "Ms. Hale, if you intend to generate income from Vale Crest property, the winery is entitled to compensation." "I haven't sold anything. Not yet." There it was. They had not come because I destroyed their barrels. They had come because the barrels might become valuable. Marcus stood and brushed the soil from his hands. "We can settle this quietly," he said. "Return what's left, stop the experiment, and we'll reduce the claim." "Reduce it to what?" $20,000. I laughed before I could stop myself. "You dumped waste beside my field, let it leak downhill, and now you want me to pay you for cleaning it up?" His face hardened. "This isn't cleaning. You're processing commercial material without a permit." Lydia listed the violations calmly. Unauthorized waste handling, open burning, potential groundwater contamination, unlicensed agricultural trials. Each one carried fines. Together, they could shut down the farm before the bank's deadline ever arrived. I looked at Eli. He had been standing near the barn, silent until then. "We'll request a county hearing," he said. Lydia closed the folder. "Good. Then the county can decide whether this experiment continues." The hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. Before Marcus left, he looked once more at the green plot. "How many?" he asked again. I folded my arms. "Enough to know why you suddenly want them back." For the first time, he had no answer. The next morning, I woke at 4:40 to the sound of diesel engines. By the time I reached the south fence, the trucks were already leaving. 200 barrels were gone, and every barrel I had marked as holding the darkest sediment had disappeared with them. The county hearing room held 46 chairs. Everyone was occupied. Marcus sat at the front beside Lydia Cross, 2 winery managers, and a Vale Crest consultant. Behind them were growers, reporters, and half the people who had told me to sell. I sat opposite with Eli and 3 cardboard boxes. No lawyer, just records. The board chair, Raymond Cole, opened the hearing at 9:03. Lydia spoke first. She called my work an uncontrolled waste experiment conducted by an inexperienced landowner under financial pressure. She displayed photographs of the kiln, dismantled barrels, and dark compost piles. The images looked worse on the projection screen. Marcus said the winery had stored the barrels temporarily and intended to reuse them. Then why were 200 removed only after the soil improved? I asked. Raymond looked at me. You'll have your turn, Miss Hale. Marcus smiled. Lydia continued. She warned about acidity, groundwater contamination, smoke, pests, and liability. By the time she finished, I sounded less like a farmer than someone running a chemical dump. Then Raymond called my name. I opened the first box. I did not tell them the land was healing. I showed them dated photographs, rainfall records, compost temperatures, earthworm counts, maps of every barrel. 2 glass jars sat before the board. One held brown runoff from the untreated field. The other held nearly clear water from the restored plot. This came from the same storm, I said. Lydia said a jar was not science, so I opened the second box. Inside were reports from 2 independent laboratories. The treated soil showed less runoff, greater water retention, deeper roots, and higher biological activity. Marcus leaned toward Lydia. They stopped smiling. Eli testified last. He explained what the charred oak was doing, why the wine sediment had to be diluted, and where my first attempts had failed. He told them about the ash, the overheated compost, and the batch that turned anaerobic. Then he explained how I corrected each mistake. That, he said, is not reckless experimentation. That is documented agricultural research. The board left for 28 minutes. Nobody spoke. When they returned, Raymond adjusted his glasses. The county would not shut down the project. I would receive a 60-day temporary permit, subject to weekly inspections and groundwater testing. It was not complete approval, but it was enough. Outside, I finally let myself breathe. Then Eli caught my arm. He held the newest laboratory report. His face had lost all color. What is it? I asked. He pointed to one line near the bottom. The carbon reading in the treated soil was nearly 4 times higher than expected. That can't happen in 6 months, he said. Then the lab made a mistake. Eli folded the report once. No, he said. They tested it twice. Eli sent new samples to a laboratory 200 miles away. He did not tell them about Vale Crest. He did not mention the barrels, the hearing, or the first report. He labeled the samples A, B, and C. Sample A came from the untreated North Field. Sample B came from the compost-only plot. Sample C came from the ground, treated with wine sediment and charred oak. 6 days later, the results arrived. Eli read them twice before handing me the report. The second laboratory confirmed everything. Sample C held nearly 4 times more stable carbon than the surrounding soil. Its water-holding capacity had increased by 63%. Root penetration had more than tripled, but that was not the number that frightened Eli. The fungal activity was unlike anything he expected to see on damaged farmland. This soil isn't just recovering, he said. It's reorganizing. What does that mean? It means the oak created places for life to remain. The yeast fed it. The clay kept it from washing away. He looked toward the south field. And your land already had something the other farms may not. 2 days later, a vineyard consultant named Daniel Mercer arrived. He worked for wineries across Oregon and California. His jacket cost more than my tractor, but he knelt in the dirt without being asked. He dug 3 holes, smelled the soil, pressed it between his fingers, then he walked the slope slowly, studying the afternoon sun and the direction of the wind. What are you planning to grow here? He asked. Clover, for now. He almost laughed. This slope could grow premium Pinot Noir. I told him Vale Crest already grew grapes on thousands of acres. Not in soil like this. He explained that the treated ground held moisture without becoming waterlogged. The oak char moderated temperature, The fungal network could help vines survive heat and drought. How much is that worth? I asked. Daniel looked across the 10 restored acres. To the right buyer? He paused. 600,000. I thought I had misunderstood him. For 10 acres? For the soil beneath them. His written offer arrived the next morning. I refused it. By Friday, another vineyard had called. Then an investment group. Then a company that wanted exclusive rights to study the process. That was when I understood why Marcus had removed those 200 barrels. He was not protecting winery property. He was removing evidence. He knew that if I processed enough barrels, I could prove the result was not an accident. I searched Grandpa's barn for old surveys, hoping to find something about the South Field's clay layer. Behind a cabinet, I found a loose floorboard. Beneath it was a wooden box secured with a rusted lock. 3 words had been burned into the lid: Southfield, 1968, and underneath, in my grandfather's handwriting, "Do not open unless the soil wakes up again." The lock broke on the 3rd strike. The lid lifted slowly, releasing the smell of cedar, dust, and old paper. Inside were 3 leather notebooks, a bundle of photographs, and a folder tied shut with green string. I opened the first notebook. The date on the cover was 1968. My grandfather's handwriting was younger then. Smaller, sharper, pressed hard enough into the paper to leave marks on the pages beneath it. The early entries were ordinary: rainfall, seed costs, harvest weights. Then, halfway through June, the notes changed. June 17th, spread crushed barrel oak across the lower orchard, mixed with grape residue from Vale Winery. I read the line twice. Vale Winery had belonged to Marcus's grandfather then. The next pages contained measurements that looked almost identical to mine: soil temperature, water depth, root length, earthworm counts. Grandpa had tested 4 plots, just as I had. 1 untreated, 1 with manure, 1 with grape residue, and 1 with charred oak mixed into the soil. My hands began to shake. I opened the photographs. The first showed the South Field, almost 60 years earlier, gray, cracked, and bare. The second showed my grandfather standing beside rows of young apple trees. The third had been taken 5 years later. The trees were twice his height, heavy with fruit. I turned it over. South Orchard. No irrigation after year 3. Oak ground still holding moisture. He already knew, I whispered. Eli leaned over my shoulder. Maybe not everything, he said, but enough to understand the pattern. The final notebook ended abruptly in 1973. No conclusion, no explanation. Just 1 sentence written across an entire page. Road crew arrives Monday. Orchard to be cleared. Vale will not oppose it. I found the answer in the folder. There were county notices, property maps, and letters between my grandfather and the Vale family. Grandpa had asked them to help protect the orchard. They refused. 1 letter called his work unproven farm speculation. Another said the winery could not risk its name on a compost experiment. The road was built through the orchard that summer. 28 trees were removed. The trial ended. I sat on the barn floor, angry at people who had been dead for decades. Then a folded page slipped from the back of the folder. It was a copy of an agreement. The Vale family had offered my grandfather $5,000 for exclusive ownership of his soil method. He never signed it. Across the bottom he had written, "They laughed until they thought it belonged to them." I stared at the words for a long time. Marcus was not repeating his grandfather's mistake. He was completing it. Then Eli picked up the final photograph. Behind the orchard, barely visible near the fence, stood a wooden sign. He wiped dust from the image and read it aloud. Trial Plot 12, do not sell this land. On the back was 1 more sentence. The clay beneath this field is the reason it works. Marcus Vale came to the farm the following afternoon. No lawyer, no foreman, just Marcus, a black folder, and the same clean boots he had worn the morning the barrels arrived. I met him beside the south field. The clover reached halfway to my knees. The soil beneath it was dark enough to stain his shoes. He looked across the slope. "You found the box," he said. It was not a question. You knew it existed. My grandfather mentioned it once. Did he mention that your family tried to buy the process after calling it useless? Marcus opened the folder. Inside was a purchase agreement. $1.2 million for the farm, the buildings, the south field, and every record connected to the barrel treatment. I closed it. No, you haven't seen the full offer. He removed another document. $2.5 million. A consulting position at Vale Crest, a house near the Western Vineyard, and a percentage of future profits if I agreed not to disclose the method independently. For a moment, the field went quiet. $2.5 million would erase the bank debt, repair my mother's house, and give me more money than anyone in my family had ever owned. Marcus saw the hesitation. This is security, Nora. No, I said. This is control. His expression changed. Do you know how difficult this will be to scale? Permits, equipment, lawsuits. One bad season and every investor disappears. So why are you offering millions? He looked toward the green slope. Because 8 months ago this was dirt. Then he looked at me. Now it is a brand. That was the first honest thing he had ever said. He was not buying the farm. He was buying the story before I could tell it without him. I handed the agreement back. No. That evening my mother drove from Portland. She read the offer at the kitchen table and began to cry. Your grandfather would want you safe. Grandpa had the same choice. And look what refusing cost him. She was right. The orchard was gone. The research had disappeared. For most of his life, nobody knew he had been right. I did not sleep. At 4:30, I opened Grandpa's ledger again. On the final page, beneath decades of soil records, he had written, "Do not confuse being paid with being valued." At sunrise, I scanned every notebook, photograph, map, and laboratory report. Then I packed soil samples from all 12 test plots. I did not send them to Marcus. I sent them to the largest regenerative agriculture fund in Oregon. At 9:12 that morning, the fund's director called me personally. She asked one question: how soon can our team see the field? The fund's team arrived 3 days later. Not in pickup trucks, in 2 black SUVs carrying soil scientists, vineyard economists, carbon specialists, and a lawyer who spent the first hour photographing every page of Grandpa's notebooks. They divided the south field into grids. They took samples at 6 depths. They measured moisture, clay content, microbial activity, fungal networks, and the amount of carbon held inside the restored soil. Then they asked me to show them everything: the failed burn, the sour compost, the barrel barriers, the drainage jars, the first 12 test beds. I expected them to focus on the green clover. They focused on my records. One scientist named Dr. Lena Ortiz spent almost an hour comparing my rainfall notes with Grandpa's measurements from 1968. Finally, she looked up. "This isn't a lucky patch of soil," she said. "What is it?" "A repeatable system." The official evaluation took 12 days. When the report arrived, I opened it at the same kitchen table where I had read Marcus's offer. The farm itself was valued at just under $3 million, but the land was only part of it. The treatment method had commercial value. The carbon stored in the soil had value. The ability to reduce winery disposal costs had value. The records proving the process had worked twice, nearly 60 years apart, had value. For the first time, someone had placed a number on what Grandpa had discovered. It was more than Marcus had offered. The fund proposed a partnership instead of a purchase. They would finance equipment, permits, laboratory testing, and expansion. I would keep the farm. I would keep control of the process. And every winery that wanted its waste transformed would pay us to take it. I signed. We named the company Hale Ground Recovery. By spring, 3 small vineyards had contracts with us. Retired barrels arrived clean, counted, and documented. Wine sediment came in sealed containers instead of leaking down hillsides. We processed the oak into biochar, blended it with agricultural waste, and tested every batch before it touched a field. The same material Marcus had abandoned behind my farm was now worth more after processing than the barrels had ever been worth holding wine. Then Vale Crest called. Their storage yard was full. New disposal regulations were approaching. And none of the larger waste companies understood how to process charred oak without sending it to a landfill. Marcus needed us. He came to my office carrying a contract. This time his boots were muddy. I read his terms once and pushed them back across the desk. "These are winery terms," I said. "What do you want?" I opened a blank agreement. "You pay transport. You pay testing. You accept liability for anything you fail to disclose." His face tightened. "And the price? 3 times what you tried to charge me for cleaning up your waste." He stared at me, then slowly nodded. Before I handed him the pen, I added one final sentence to the contract. Marcus read it. Then he looked up. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious." The sentence Marcus objected to was only 23 words long. Vale Crest Winery will publicly credit Silas Hale's original research and fund soil restoration grants for small farms throughout Red Hollow Valley. Marcus read it again. "This has nothing to do with waste processing. It has everything to do with it. You're asking me to advertise your family. I'm asking you to tell the truth." He leaned back in the chair. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Then he picked up the pen. Vale Crest signed the contract that afternoon. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood beside me at a county press conference in the South Field. Cameras faced him. Growers filled the rows behind us. He acknowledged that his family had dismissed Grandpa's work nearly 60 years earlier. He did not apologize. Not exactly, but he said Silas Hale's records had helped establish one of the most promising soil restoration systems the valley had seen in decades. For Marcus, it was a statement. For me, it was a debt finally paid. The first restoration grants went to 6 small farms. One had lost half its topsoil to erosion. Another could no longer afford irrigation. A third belonged to a widow whose family had been growing pears for 4 generations. We did not promise miracles. We tested the clay. We measured drainage. We adjusted every mixture. Some fields needed more char. Some needed less sediment. One failed completely, and we started again. That mattered. Grandpa's method was not magic. It worked because the land was observed, recorded, and treated like something alive. 8 months after the first truck arrived, I stood where barrel 317 had leaked into the hill. The clover had been replaced by young grapevines. Their roots reached through soil that had once been too hard for a shovel. The farm a developer had valued at $240,000 was now worth several million. But the number never felt like the most important part. The winery had seen 800 useless barrels. I had seen a problem I could not afford to ignore. The bank had seen exhausted land. Grandpa had seen an unfinished experiment, and somewhere between the wine sediment, the burned oak, the failed compost, and the rain, the soil began to hold life again. People still ask whether I was lucky. Maybe I was, but luck did not number 800 barrels. Luck did not record soil temperatures before sunrise. Luck did not fail, adjust, and begin again. Marcus Vale was right about one thing. Nothing had been growing on my land. But that did not mean the land was worthless. It meant nobody had returned what it needed. Grandpa wrote one final sentence in his ledger. I had it carved into the sign at the entrance to Hale Ground Recovery. The land remembers everything you take from it, and everything you give back. Have you ever watched someone throw away the very thing that later changed your life? Tell me your story in the comments, and share this with someone rebuilding what everyone else has already given up on.